menu. Tonight, what makes the perfect Dragon's Den contestant? Where Salah Willingham is a British entrepreneur and was one of the investors on the BBC's Dragon's Den in 2015 and 2016. And she was speaking to Gordon a couple of nights ago and told him how her journey as a businesswoman started.
When I was at Pizza Express, I desperately wanted to travel, and my dad didn't let me have a gap year. So my Planet Hollywood and Pizza Express days were running international departments and traveling all over the world, doing what I loved, which was the business side in an industry that I'd fallen in love with, which was hospitality, but I really wanted to travel. Then I was getting to sort of towards my late 20s. And at that point, I was like, I can't keep living out of a suitcase if at some point I really want to have a family. And it was that moment where, kind of that epiphany really moment where I said, actually, if I do want to have a family, I'm going to have to change this path that I'm on. And that was what made me become an entrepreneur, not because I was like, oh, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, because actually I was really happy learning and growing within a corporate business. I loved it, actually. It was brilliant. But it didn't suit the next stage of my life. And so that's why I decided to then go off and become an entrepreneur, because I thought I have to have control of my diary, have to. And that was a big shift then. And then, in fact, had my own business and started to have lots of children, and then thought, God, careful what you wish for. And at one point I had like 1,500 staff and 4 kids, or nearly had 4 kids. And I thought, I can't do this. I actually need to step away from running something. And that's when I started to get into, I sold that business and then started to get into investing. So each stage of my life, even as a teenager, wanting to work in hospitality because I couldn't really afford to have these great nights out in these fantastic places. So I thought, right, well, I'll go and work in them then. So, whatever it is that I've done, it's always been because I've wanted something in my life. And my work has very much fitted around it. And I'm such a believer of that, everybody talks about having a career path. I just don't believe in it. I think you have to have a life path. And frankly, a career's got to fit in. And
like you say, necessity is the mother of invention. It makes you do things. But did you, in the same way, did you envisage being on TV and think, actually, I'd quite like to have a bit of a media personality as well?
Oh, not in a million years. Like, never ever it entered my head at all. And it was so random and actually turned out to be something that I loved doing. The first thing I ever did was a series called The Restaurant on BBC with Raymond Blanc. It was a bit like The Apprentice, and I was Raymond was the Alan Sugar and I was like the Karen Brady, if you see what I mean. It was that was the premise of the show. And there was 8 couples, all opened restaurants on week 1, and then every single week they had lots of tests and challenges, and then we would shut one down every week. And then at the end of it, the winner in the first series, Raymond invested in them. And then by the time we got to the 3rd series, I was like, I don't want to do another series unless actually I can, have an equal vote and invest in the winner. And the London Cocktail Club actually was born out of that show, which is now a fantastic group of 20 odd bars. So, that was what we did then.
I remember opening Good Street in London, wasn't it?
Oh, my favourite. I know you're not supposed to have a favourite because they're all as perfect as each other. But yeah, it's my favourite, Goose Street, yes.
Remember it very well. Can you believe this? Nearly 10 years since Dragon's Den. I think, 2015, I think we said. So we're not far off 10 years since that happened. So what was your experience like as a big investor in the Den?
I loved it. I really did. It was very different than I'd expected it to be. It was all quite last minute and it was not on the card, so I hadn't had much chance to think about it really. So I turned up not knowing what to expect really. And the bits of it that I ended up loving were bits that I hadn't anticipated. So the challenge of sitting in a group of 5 when you all want the business. So I had not expected that competition between 5 of us, which I ended up loving. Certainly by the 2nd series, I'd totally worked out what Deborah's tell was and how Peter played the game when he wanted to get everybody else out.
The poker faces.
Yeah, exactly. And it had taken, to begin with, I was just like this excited child going, pick me, pick me. And then I was like, oh, hang on, I'm definitely the only one who's played their cards so far. So, and I learned from that, and I loved that side of it. And the other side I loved was actually when you almost work as a team, and to have five smart people kind of interrogate a business is really, really interesting, because all five of us had very different backgrounds, and the show's not produced at all. So what you see, obviously you see an edited version, but what you see is very, very real. So those people walk in through that lift, through those doors, and we know nothing at all about what they're coming in to talk about. And then they do their pitch exactly as you see. And then what happens is, individually, we start to ask questions and to unpick the business and to learn what's happening. And sometimes that can take 2 or 3 hours. And what I loved so much was, I might sit there and ask my questions for like 10, 15 minutes and get to the bottom of it and think, oh, right, I've got this. I've made all my notes. Right, I know where I'm at with this business. And then somebody else would ask a question. I think, God, that was so smart. I would
question.
never think of that. What a great question. It was so good. And I loved, actually, it was like I found a sixth gear in my brain. It was brilliant. Really, really enjoyed that side of it. Intellectually, it was very, very stimulating. And obviously, as an investor, what's not to love about sitting on an armchair in 120 businesses being paraded in front of you, right? I mean, It's great.
It's a great arena. So this reminds our listeners tonight, this is Sarah Willingham doing her very best negotiations, and you'll understand exactly why she's doing very well for herself. Have a listen to this.
I think you'd probably gathered I really like it. I really like you. I think I could work extremely well with you. I stood in your shoes, wouldn't pick those two dragons, and the reason I wouldn't is because they both do the same thing. They can both get you into Sainsbury's, or they can both get you into the big retailers. You actually need one of them that'll get you into the retailers and one of them that'll open up other channels.
Sarah, Peter and I don't have at all similar
But John wants to get into Sainsbury's.
And many other stores.
And I have phenomenal contacts in bars and pubs and clubs and restaurants, as I own a few and have worked in them for years and years and years.
I tell you what, Sarah, I really wanted to know from you, can you remember the occasion in your career where you had the sweaty palms, your knees are knocking together, you're going over numbers in your head, and the moment comes where you have to present and suddenly your lips are sticking to your teeth, you forget where you're going, and it doesn't work out as planned? Because I think it's always good to offer a bit of encouragement to people who've had a bit of a stinker in that arena.
So when I decided to go it alone after Pizza Express, I was kind of in my late 20s, and I'd worked for a big corporate at this point. I'd not been in this sort of small entrepreneurial environment. And I'd made this decision, as I said earlier, I made this decision because I wanted to have a family and I wanted to be in control of my own diary. So I thought I'd spent a year, which was a gift, sharing an office with the CEO and the MD of Pizza Express, two fantastic guys, really smart. And I'd spent that year asking them every single question that I thought I needed to know, and every question to possibly understand the business model of what it was that they did. And by the end of it, I thought, you know what? I actually get this. I understand why you're a floated business. I understand why you've raised debt. I understand why you spend the money that you spend opening a site. I understand your return on investment model. I understand. I got it. I was like, I get this. I totally get this rollout model. And I understand your profit and loss account. And I thought to myself, you know what? I can do this myself. I'm going to go off and I'm going to do to Indian food what we've done to pizzas. I tried to do it with Pizza Express, but they weren't interested. So I went off to raise the money myself. And I was like, I felt like Sarah the Small from Stoke. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And that was the time, the amount of people that I sat in front of to pitch this idea of, I'd found a little business that I wanted to buy, the Bombay Bicycle Club, and I wanted to roll it out to be the largest chain of Indian restaurants in the UK. And I'd never done a business myself. Yes, of course, I'd been in hospitality and I understood the rollout of Pizza Express, and I'd opened many Pizza Expresses abroad as well, actually, which was very similar to opening a new business.